Okay, so thanks for coming here today. My name is Natasha Kitano, and I'm one of the language and learning educators with the GRED team. So that's the Graduate Research, Education and Development team. And we are here to support your students. And today's workshop is supporting HDR academic writing. And hopefully you'll find lots of benefits in your own supervision from today's workshop. Okay, so just a bit of housekeeping. Obviously, everyone's quite familiar with Zoom now. You can chat to me directly if you like, chat to each other directly. Great. And I guess, as I said, it is quite intimate. There's only a few of us here. We will have an opportunity to chat soon. So, but in the meantime, because I am recording, be aware you can turn your video on or off. So I'm here today with my colleague, Dr. Murray Lane. Murray's going to be there in the background for part of the workshop. So thanks in advance, Murray. Give everyone a wave. Okay, excellent. All right, so let me begin with the acknowledgement. QUT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands, and where I am today here in New Farm, my own house, the Turrbal and Yagara people. We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits, and we recognise that these lands have never been ceded and have always been places of teaching, research and learning. QUT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within our community. Okay, so I'm just going to get my screen organised so I can see all of my notes. So academic writing, obviously, academic writing skills are important for your students because writing is the principal channel that students use to communicate their ideas, and obviously is the foundation on which their degree is awarded. Based on this fact, it's paramount that we provide HDR candidates with both support and also motivation. The reason we do that is we need to build their confidence as writers and also allow them to develop that sense of scholarly identity. So really, there is no escaping conversations on writing. And again, it's, I guess, the reason that you're all here today. Sorry, I'm just still organizing my screen here. Okay. So I thought I might just make this a little intimate and ask you, you can either turn on your video or in the chat button, tell your colleagues and myself, why is it you've come to this workshop? Why are you here today?
I'm happy to go if you want, Natasha.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia.
So my name's Claudia. I work in the Faculty of Health. I'm a nurse by background, and I'm an ECR working at the moment. And I am very early in supporting HDR students. So I only had my PhD conferred early last year, and I've been working thank you, but I've been working with some master's students since that time, and also have just started working with some PhD students as well. And particularly in working with the master's students, I think I really feel like I just feel like I could be better at helping them understand what is expected more quickly and to help them get there. People whose English is their second language, how to best support those students as well. And I just wondered if sometimes I was trying to give advice, but it wasn't, like, the outcomes weren't coming back to me with the improvements I was looking for. So I figured I was not conveying the message clearly enough in some ways. So yeah, I came.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I think everything that you learned today, I'm actually going to talk a lot today, but everything that you learn, I think, will really help you just with the overall support of the academic writing skills and knowledge that your students need to have. So I'm really glad you're here, and I hope you can benefit from this. Thank you for being brave. So we also have Melinda has said she's in the Faculty of Business and Law, a few HDR students who need detailed support with academic writing. Rachel has said, here to get some refresh on tips and advice on how best to support HDRs in the preparation of their final documents. Okay, great. Shirley saying help students to write at an academic level, and especially at that that research, as research students, it's really important. Umberto is saying from the ABE school, I don't know what that acronym means, but he's also an early career researcher. I like to get tips on how to help PhD students not to make silly writing mistakes. Excellent. That's right. And I think I actually wanted to tell you that the way I've created the workshop for you is really based on a workshop I provide students. So it sort of mirrors what I tell students as well. Oh, sorry, we've got the architecture and built environment. Thank you. QT has too many acronyms. All right, excellent. So let's move along. I also thought I'd show you this quote by Kamler and Thompson, who I love reading. The workshop is important for you because as Claudia just mentioned, supervisors need to address those writing issues that prevent their students from developing productive research writing practices. So if you're aware of the writing needs of your students, it will help you, and it will help your relationship. It will help so many things. So I thought this is how I'd break it up today. We're going to talk about, well, firstly, you are going to decide what are the major writing issues that are affecting your students. What can you see? And it might, if you talk to each other, you might find they're quite common, regardless of faculty and school. The second thing, and this is the big chunk of the workshop, is I'll be talking to you about the common writing errors that I see, my perspective from as an HDR language and learning educator, and that's as someone who does one-to-one support with students from all faculty, all points of candidature as well. And so this will be the big chunk of today's workshop. And then the last part, I'm going to end with, I've compiled some comments from examiners, and I actually want to get deeper into this in 2023, but I also highlight all of the common comments from examiners, and they really do, they really are the same as all of the common writing problems that I have identified. Okay, so that's how we're going to conduct the workshop today. So first off, I think there's about 6 people here. So I think, what do you think? Do you all want to go into one room? Just give me a thumbs up, or would you prefer two small rooms? Yeah, I think one room is good. So what I'll do is, because then we get that nice, you can learn. It's really great to learn from each other as well, and to know what other supervisors are experiencing. So here's the question. From your experience, and remember, we may have people here who are more experienced than others, and it might be a good idea to address that, or tell people that when you first arrive in the room. What do you think are the major writing issues affecting your students' candidature? So I just would like to remind you to de-identify any students that you may want to talk about in this chat. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick 10-minute chat. When we come back, if there's one person who just wants to make a little list of everything, and hopefully I'll be addressing them for the rest of the workshop. So here we go. It's 1:10 now, so we'll come back about 1:20-ish, and then we'll have a look at all of the major writing issues that you think are affecting your students. Okay, all right, so I'll see you guys in around 10 minutes. You don't want to go in, Murray?
No, I was going to do some other work, actually.
Okay. I thought that was the reason that you were coming today.
No, just to help you.
Oh, that's all right. Okay, thanks. All right, I'll go.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. And I get to see everyone's faces for a few seconds. Okay, great. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that opportunity. It's nice to be able to connect with your peers, isn't it? And listen to what everybody else is experiencing. So this is an opportunity for you to let me know what were the, I guess you guys were only in one room, but would anybody just like to tell me some general writing issues, and if you found you had similar writing issues to your colleagues there?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So some of the things we talked about were writing issues like making sure students know how to write a topic sentence and structure a paragraph, through to the more strategic issues of building an argument and building a story through the whole thesis, making sure they had consistency in terminology rather than chopping and changing, referencing, not realizing they need to do multiple drafts, writing essay style rather than using academic writing conventions, realizing there's always more they can do to refine their work, moving on from synthesizing to write about why their research matters, using academic writing and discipline terminology, especially if they're from a work background that writes quite differently, and realizing that the role of the supervisor is not to proofread or correct grammar, but to supervise.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much, Melinda. You have basically outlined the rest of the workshop. So I'm really glad to hear that everything that you guys identify are also similar to the issues that as a language and learning educator I identify. So I appreciate you putting on your camera there, and it's nice to see you. All right, well, unless anyone wants to add anything else, and again, you're welcome to use the chat to do that. I might just go on. And as I said, the second part of the workshop today is just a whole lot of me talking, but we are, there's not many of us here. So please feel free to interrupt me, ask any questions as you like. I will sort of stick around at the end for any Q&As that you have as well. But yeah, I'm really happy to answer any questions as I go. All right. So I've got this little graph here for you. So we've compiled this based on how we receive one-to-one referrals. So at GRED and for the HDR writing support team, there's two of us, myself and Dr. Kerry Freeman, and we get one-to-one referrals from supervisors through it's what's called an HDR early alert. And you can see here, we get too many referrals at the end of candidatures. So I'm encouraging you here today to, if you do need to refer students, please do it early. I also thought it would be timely to tell you, and maybe some of you know, the confirmation, what's it called? Confirmation of candidature document has had a question added recently because of the fact that too many students are being sent to us at the end of candidature. And that's obviously when it's more difficult to help them. It doesn't mean it's impossible, and we see so many students actually cross the line, but we do want them to be sent to us earlier on. And that question that's been added is, are the written skills of a sufficient standard to give confidence of a timely completion? So just look out for that question, and I think that you need to check that. Okay. I also am very aware that as a supervisor, you are busy. You're not only, and Melinda suggested this earlier, you're not only developing your research, but you're also, you're not only developing the students' research, but you're also developing them as a researcher. Basically, that means you're helping your students to create new knowledge, to make that original contribution, but also you're teaching and training and developing them to become that independent researcher. So the reason I'm telling you all this is because there's actually been a gradual shift in the way that teachers and researchers report student learning. It's moved away from that simple acquisition process based on, teacher talk, teacher transmission, to a process which involves students being actively engaged in learning and more importantly, being responsible for the management of their learning. So this process of students taking control is referred to as self-regulation. It seems quite common sense, doesn't it? But it's really important for you today to remember that you need to help students learn to be motivated and self-regulated throughout their candidature. So that implies autonomy, self-control, self-direction, and self-discipline. And I also remind your students in all of our workshops of this a lot. Kerry and I constantly talk about self-regulation and evaluative judgment skills, which I'll talk to you about later. All right, so moving along. Oh, that was an actual video. There we go. I have some more information on self-regulation, and these slides will be sent to you at the end of the session, and there are all lots of clickable links in here as well. So I thought I would actually start with the takeaway points because I'll remind you of these later, but it's nice to know what you will learn from this workshop as well. So the takeaway points for today is you need to talk to your students about their writing. And Melinda suggested this, as she recapped your breakout room. You should not feel pressured to edit and correct all of your students' writing mistakes. Once, I think it was several years ago now, Kerry and I facilitated a supervisor workshop, and I had a supervisor come to me at the end and just say, I have just had my mind blown. I cannot believe that it's not my job to sit there and track changes and do all of the editing. So it's really important that you understand that the students need to take charge, and they need to I think the terminology is to be an active agent. So your students need to be self-regulated learners. And something else that I also want you to leave today knowing is that feedback is a two-way street. And if you are interested, I'm facilitating an in-depth workshop on feedback in September. So you are able to register for that if you're interested in learning more about feedback. So I actually have a, hi, Abby, do you have a question?
Thanks, Natasha. Yeah, I do, just because this came up in the breakout room and I don't want to give people the wrong information.
Yes.
One of our group talked about the fact that their student was using Studiosity for same day feedback. I put the link in the chat, but I'm a bit unclear because the website says that's only for coursework students.
Yes, we've had this conversation with our director, Professor Esa Yartinen, and together we've decided that Studiosity isn't really helpful for the HDR student cohort, just because it's so much more nuanced, and so yes, they are not able to access Studiosity as an HDR student at QUT.
Okay, so they're probably using it illegally somehow.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I know a lot of students use, is it Grammarly as well, but Kerry and I always encourage our students, so what happens in the one-to-one, we sit with them, we look at their writing, and we find what their weakness is, and we talk to them about it, and we encourage them to improve on their weakness, whether it be a grammar, consistent problem, or academic writing style, forgetting topic sentences, or having, paragraphs that are of different length. So we identify the issues and encourage them to fix them. So there's no we're sitting there and changing all of their grammar. It's up to them to be self-regulated and to learn and to understand that they have to fix their mistakes. Okay. All right, so I'll move along, and I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with what we do at GRED, but we really are here to support you, to support your students, and we have a tiered suite. So we have all these online self-help resources, and that's on the HDR Student Blackboard site. These online self-help resources, I'll just give you a hint. For example, A lot of students, and I'm going to talk about this later, mistake the tense that they should be using in a particular chapter. And so we have a whole document that talks about the different tenses, whether it be present simple, past simple, present perfect, all the different types of tenses, and then we give them examples. And this document is there for them to access all the time. And it's just really helpful, and it explains, in your introduction chapter or in this part of the chapter, your methods chapter, and it's a really great self-help resource. So then we have all of our recordings, which are always accessible. Like today's workshop is now being recorded and will be accessible for other supervisors. But we also have live events, and we have writing circles, we have workshops, and then the lounge, and I'll talk to you about them in a minute. And then, as I was just talking to Abby, we have the one-to-one support. So for students to access that, you need to fill out an HDR early alert form. And as I mentioned earlier, and I might just quickly go back to that slide, we're getting so many of them. We're getting more than half of them referred to us, really too late. So just to remember to send them through early. And also with the one-to-one support, we keep the communication very transparent. So whatever we say to the students after the session, we CC the supervisor in so that everybody's aware about what we're talking about. Claudia's just said in the chat, 2 students were advanced practice in nursing. They're doing research over 2 semesters with the thesis, but technically coursework. So maybe
sorry, that was just in relation to our studiosity discussion in the small group. Yeah, so they probably were because they were using studiosity a lot, but they would have been technically coursework, I think.
Yeah, we had a long discussion about it, but it just doesn't fit with the HDR students, so we decided against it. And you have us. So here's some examples of workshops. This is by no means an exhaustive list. I've actually just created a new workshop that I did in semester 1. I'll be repeating in semester 2. It's called Thesis by Publication, because that's becoming a popular way to present your thesis. But have a look here. We've tried to arrange it according to candidature. If any of these topics sounds like something your students would benefit from, please encourage them to come, because if you encourage them, they will more than likely turn up. We also have writing circles. Again, writing circles, these workshops keep growing, the topics keep growing. 2023, I have a plan to do a writing circle on abstracts, because I had like 5 one-to-one students in a row come to me. Can you help me with my abstract? Can you help me? And I just thought, wow, I think this would be a really great writing circle. And the writing circles differ from the workshops in that they're more interactive. We provide exemplars and things, and sometimes they need to do a little bit of homework to come along. Yes, Rachel, abstracts are really popular, and the wonderful thing is, and in fact, our HDR student Blackboard site has some information on abstracts as well, and it works for publications. It also works in general for your thesis. Yeah, good. Well, I'm so pleased that it's a good idea. Okay, so here we go. This is my part. And as I mentioned, these are the areas that I have identified with dealing with, all of these hundreds of students. And again, I've taken these slides and sort of adapted them, mirrored them for the supervisor, but they're really what I do in different workshops for students as well. All right, so deep breath, and here I go. I have 10. I've got 10 common writing mistakes, and you can see they're here. I'm going to go through them one by one. Just let you have a quick look at that. Thank you, Umberto. I will be sending these slides out to you at the end. And as I said, they have lots of clickable links. All right, so the first one, number 1, is topic sentences. So with topic sentences, the problem that I see is either there is no topic sentence, or the topic sentence is like 10 lines long, or the topic sentence topic has no connection to the rest of the paragraph. So basically, I get this. I get what happens is as I read the topic sentence, I think I'm reading about a banana, but by the time I come to the end of it, it turns out that it's a kiwi fruit. So I remind your students that one topic, one paragraph must mean one topic. And obviously that paragraph needs to have cohesion. We spend lots of lots of time talking about paragraphs. And even in my one-to-one sessions, it's the number one. It's the number one common problem. And as I said to you at the beginning, the reason that you're here today is to see what I see and to check what everybody else is. And so if you have this knowledge, it's important that you look at your own students' writing. Can you see, is there a topic sentence? So I remind your students that we encourage the students to use their voice. And that's also part, and we'll talk about using a critical voice later. A lot of these seem to overlap and blend with each other, but we encourage them to use their voice, in that we don't want a topic sentence to have too much detail. And this may not be in the lit review chapter, but just in general, we want them to use their voice as an expert, as a researcher, and we don't want too many statistics and numbers and things going on here, so there's no need for citation. We tell the students that their job as a writer is to tell the reader what this paragraph is going to be about, that one idea, that one point in that paragraph. And it's also telling the reader what they can expect. Again, I've put normally here. It doesn't include mention of sources and authors, but it may. But generally, we do encourage them to have their voice if they can. Just because I've been an academic writing teacher for so long, because I've been so engrossed in the genre, I tell them the transition signal, like therefore or in addition, it really shouldn't start a paragraph, because a paragraph should be a main idea, and those particular transition signals sort of are connecting sentences, but it's not always. And again, not too much specific information in the very first sentence. That can come in the body. So I give them examples, and I'm giving you very brief examples today. So I just say to them, this is just such a long, like how many lines? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 7 lines. So I guess I'm doing this very quickly with you, but I give them better examples, especially in the writing circles, where I'm providing all those exemplars. And I say, this is a better topic sentence. It's in my voice. It's telling the reader what the whole paragraph is about. And then I can go along and synthesize other literature as well. Okay, please feel free to add a comment as I'm going. I also explain to them, I use the hamburger as my example. Hopefully you're not all hungry out there. And I say to them, a paragraph is similar to a hamburger. It has a topic, has all the supporting literature, and then a concluding bun as well. So this slide may be particularly useful to you. It has a clickable links here. So we have online resources, we have the writing circles that have been recorded, and the workshops with the different. And so I think these particular topics I have here all have some information on topic sentences. This particular one here, the online resource, is really great. I send this to nearly every student after a one-to-one session, and it's just telling them what a paragraph looks like. So once you get these slides, please click on them yourselves and see if you find them useful. And again, feel free to send them through to your students. Okay, so that brings me to the second major issue I see in writing, and that's the cohesion. So we differentiate, Kerry and I differentiate between what is cohesion and what is coherence. And Melinda talked to that earlier as well. And we basically say to them that the cohesion is the sentence to sentence micro level of a paragraph. And then we talk about coherence as the overall connectivity of ideas. And I'll be talking about that next. So cohesion, coherence, they're often used together. They have a very similar meaning, but and they basically relate to how an academic text joins together to make it a unified whole. But for us and for you, think of cohesion as the micro level, and coherence, in contrast, it's that macro level, and it's the organization, connection of ideas, and so forth. Okay, so I have a really great writing circle on cohesion. Please send your students to it because I think they all need it. All right, so again, I've used the analogy of a hamburger. Apologies if you're hungry. But again, it's just showing that's what it is. The top bun is where you're telling your reader what this paragraph is about. I say to them, your whole thesis is made up of paragraphs. They're the building blocks of your sections, of your chapters, and your entire thesis, and you need to get it right. Okay, so I break it down a little bit more. I talk to them. Actually, I often joke with them and say I should have a tattoo on my head that says, don't forget your reader, because I think that's a really common issue as well, is they have all of this knowledge and content and data in their brains, but they forget they need to tell their reader. Sometimes I sit with them in a one-to-one and they stop me and they'll say, oh, Tasha, before you read this, let me just say to you, and they provide some context. And then I say to them, well, you need to write that context in your writing, because otherwise your reader is lost. So I think that's probably important for you to be aware of as well. Okay, so again, I remind them that the body sentences, so that's the first sentence after the topic sentence, it needs to support that first sentence. They need to continually go back and check that first sentence. They provide evidence or an explanation. They synthesize, and it has to be in a clear and logical way, because your readers want transparency in the reading. And obviously it needs to have a contemporary focus with recent and well-respected literature. Again, when I sit with students, I did this yesterday. I sat with a student, we were reading her paragraph, and we started with the topic sentence. We made a great topic sentence, and then we kept going, and I kept going back. And I think she was going crazy. Because I kept going back to the topic sentence, and I'm like, okay, does it connect? And we need to always make sure that the body sentences connect to that topic sentence. Okay, so then again, the final sentence, and I want to stress to you, as I stress to your students, it's not every single paragraph we need a bottom bun that says the so what, but we do need this somewhere, sometimes throughout the document. So we talk about the relevance. Why have you just given me all this information? Why have you synthesized all this literature? How does it connect to your research? To your context, your problem, your question, and so on. They need to think about that. And this very point will come later when I talk to you about a common problem, which is forgetting to show the value of your research. So we'll be talking about that later. Okay, so these are the things that they need to consider as well throughout, and especially in their paragraphs. So I've stolen this slide from my cohesion writing circle. I basically talk to them how they can use reference markers or repetition. Word families is a really great part where I tell them if their first sentence uses an adjective, for example, what's an example? Comfortable. And then the second sentence, to connect it, I can use the noun form, which is a word family, which is comfort, and I can connect the sentences that way. It's probably too complicated to go in with you here, but it's a really great and beneficial writing circle. We also talk about synonyms, transition signals, and how there's all different types of thematic development that your students can use to have a cohesive document. So again, we have some activities. This is using transition signals, for example, and I give them a list of transition signals and they throw them in there. And I know this does seem very basic, but it's actually surprising to me how few students actually use transition signals. And yeah, just a little bit of practice to do that. Again, I explained to them the paragraphs need to be, their chapters need to look like that. Something else, and I think probably fits here in the cohesion problem, is the sentences, the long sentences. I don't know if anybody out there has witnessed this as well with their students. Sometimes they write these really long sentences, and especially in a one-to-one, I sit there and I need to just really concentrate. And I say to them, why don't we cut this sentence in half? Wordiness, sentence length is a really common problem with students. And I say to them, one way you can avoid that is read the sentence aloud. And when your voice is trying to pause, that's when you can, it's probably the best place to stop the sentence and start again. I went to a workshop recently that Inga Newburn, she's a professor at ANU, and she's the author of The Thesis Whisperer. I don't know if you know about her and the Thesis Whisperer website, but she talked about this being a common problem as well. And her suggestion is that a sentence should not be longer than 50 words. I don't actually stipulate an amount with the students because sometimes they get so fixated on that. But I think it's actually probably a really good idea. Around 50 words is enough. So again, I show them that examples. It's a 70 word sentence. And then I talk to them about good examples. And I also have a writing circle in common writing areas, and I talk to students about the sentence types. In English, we actually have 4 sentence types. And so I remind them if they don't know, or I tell them if they've never heard of it, as a simple sentence, a compound sentence, a complex and a compound complex sentence. And obviously, nobody needs to be an English teacher and know these things, but having that knowledge can actually help them with their punctuation and knowing how to write a sentence that's succinct and not overly long. I'm not sure if you're aware either, but Word has a function now. If you go to review, you can click read aloud and Word will read the document out for you. And sometimes it's nice if you don't want to do it yourself, it's nice to hear that as well. So that's also an option. Something else that I encourage my students to do, and you can equally encourage your students, is to actually break down the sentences. So it sounds tedious, but it really works. You get a paragraph and you get them to put it into, okay, that's sentence 1, that's sentence 2, sentence 3, and just look at the whole paragraph according to sentences and try to find ways to create cohesion. Okay. And also, I'm just looking at my notes here, I encourage you students to have some form of consistency with the length of the paragraphs. Sometimes I see sections where one paragraph is 8 sentences and the next paragraph is 20 sentences. And, I say to them, it's good to have that form of consistency as well. And I also, when I'm doing a one-to-one, sometimes if we're looking at a particular section, before we actually look at the writing, I step back and I look at the section and I count how many paragraphs are in this particular section. And sometimes I see 12 paragraphs in a particular section, which that is going to take a lot of organization. There's no subheadings there. It's just continual paragraphs. And, I will have a headache straight away because I can't, as a reader, I'm not being guided. So I say to them, if you have this section and you want to put 12 paragraphs here, you need to really clearly organize them and perhaps throw in some subheadings, which will guide the reader as well. Is this making sense to all of you out there? Just making sure that everybody's still, okay, great. Okay, good. I feel like I'm just talking to my picture here. Okay, good. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. So transition signals as well. As I said to you, students don't use them enough, and they really can help with your with cohesion. And as I mentioned to you, this is a little copy and paste of one of the documents we have on the HDR Student Blackboard site, which tells the students, you know, use these words, add these to your writing to get some cohesion in your document. Okay, so again, lots of clickable links here. These are for you and for you to send your students. Ways to help your students get that cohesion in their documents. So obviously that's going to segue to the next common error, which is coherence. And as I mentioned, that relates to the organization and the connection of ideas and whether they can be understood by the reader. Okay, and so it's really that macro level. I say to your students that all of your chapters in your thesis are standalone chapters, but obviously they also need to connect. And for those students who are doing thesis by publication, really important that they have that coherence as well to their overall research question or questions, and make sure that each of their papers have that beautiful coherence as well. Okay, so again, taken from information we give your students, coherence focuses on the connection of ideas, develop your argument, support your argument, synthesize, integrate readings, and organizing and clarifying your ideas. So we talk to them about that thread in the document. Some people refer to it as a golden thread. You may see people read about that as well, but basically we remind them, and this is actually what the reason we remind them is because it is a problem. They forget. They don't have that connection. You know, sometimes I'll read something, and this in chapter 3, and the students will say, "Oh, but I've already mentioned that in the previous chapter." And so I say to them, "Well, remind the reader of that. Remind the examiner, because the examiner might not start at chapter 1. Your whole document needs to be connected, and you need to remind your reader who's going to benefit from your research, who the stakeholders are, what your research questions and aims are all throughout the document." So they need to develop and support their argument, and really importantly, their contribution to the field. And we were talking about that soon. Ideas and concepts are connected and answer the research question or hypotheses. So one way to create coherence is, we recommend, and I'm not sure if all of you out there agree or do this or not, is to have a short paragraph at the start of every chapter. And it's a little introductory paragraph. And we give them good examples, and we tell them to have a chapter summary as well. And we provide good examples, and we tell them why, what should be included. I don't think I have those slides here, but the reason, here, for example, in the introduction, we tell them of the tense. The tense here should be provides it, it's present simple, and we tell them what the introductory paragraph is all about and how it refers to chapter 1, chapter 2, and then the chapter summary. They may include what's going to come next if they want, and we tell them to be consistent in how they write their introductory paragraphs and summary paragraphs as well. Okay, obviously we go into much more detail with the students, but I'm just giving you an overview so that you know what we do, and also you may like to implement these strategies with your students. Yes. So Abby has just put into the chat that it's a good strategy, particularly if they have multiple results chapters. Absolutely. And ultimately, what's happening is you're just telling the reader again, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I've done, and this is what's coming next, just to have that beautiful coherence throughout the document. We also encourage subheadings. The reason for that is, again, we're thinking of the reader, but they're representing key concepts. So I know for me, when I'm reading a document and I see a subheading, I stop and I go, okay, well, this must be important. What's this about? And they're like that signpost for me. And they're showing me that something's important. That's why you've made a subheading for it. It's also a way to stop those endless paragraphs I was talking to you about before. And visually, they convey that level of importance. I remind your students that using headings and subheadings are great, but you need to remember to update your table of contents regularly. So that's just an example of that. And I give them little lessons. So again, it's really interesting to me. Sometimes when I read a student's writing, I see they have this wonderful subheading, like this, for example, and I say, okay, research design framework. So my mind is focusing on the research design framework. But what happens is the students think, oh, but before I get to the framework, I might just give some other information, a little bit of context. And they start writing all of this stuff that's got nothing to do with the research design framework. And as a reader, I'm lost. Well, where is she going with this? So I show them these two choices and I say to them, which is the best sentence to put directly after your subheading? And hopefully you'll all agree that the answer is B. And I say to them, you don't need to use the exact words, but if you give me a lot of background and a lot of context before you get to the point, I'm going to be lost. So I remind them to keep the reader, make it transparent, make it predictable. And so that will engage your reader throughout as well. Okay, so again, lots of information for you here to share with your students on coherence. Okay, so as I said to you, a lot of these issues blend with each other, they overlap, but organization, really important. If the document's not organized, or if the student isn't organized prior to writing, they're going to have to rewrite and there's going to be lots of problems. So I explain to them they need to have clear organization in their sections, in their chapters, and as a whole. So what I do is say to them that we're going to the theatre. And I say, we need that introductory section, which I talked to you about before, the body of the chapter, and then also that summary, which again, overlaps with that coherence. So I say to them, the introductory section, as I showed you with that example, it's explaining how the chapter is structured. It's indicating the argument or the key message, and it's giving an overview of the chapter, and not only of the chapter, but how it contributes to the entire thesis. And you can address part of the overall research question or aim in that intersection as well. The body, again, that tattoo, think of your reader. How are you going to organize your paragraphs? And I'm going to give you some examples in a moment. Remember, your messages need to be logical and persuasive as well. So have those subheadings. This is similar information to what I told you earlier. And again, that summary. I say to them, it's not a conclusion, it's a summary of the chapter. And the reason for it is it's explaining the significance of the information, how it contributes, and it may or may not include a link to the next chapter. Okay, I think I've used the same slide. Something else that you can do as a supervisor is to use exemplars. So the reason that exemplars work is because you can highlight quality work, but you can also highlight poor style. We use them all the time. Kerry and I have so many exemplars in all of our workshops and writing circles. Another real great benefit of them is they can reduce your students' anxiety. If they can see from other people's work, what's the expected outcome, it will just reduce that anxiety. So we encourage your students through the exemplars to practice noticing, making judgments. And it's not just about the content about what they read, but it's also that mechanical part of the writing. the word choice, the flow. Is there a clear thread about the research problem? Is there a clear thread about the value of the research? So we want your students to notice the way researchers in their field write. It's really important, and it's actually going to help them improve their writing. So I encourage you to recommend exemplars to your students. I always say to them, okay, everybody tell me, have you read your supervisor's thesis? And it's amazing to me, only half of them ever do read their supervisor's thesis. So beware, they may be all out there looking at your thesis. But I'd like to suggest to you today that you create a bank of exemplars for your students. And when you're recommending a certain thesis, think about it. Are you recommending a chapter? Are you recommending a section? Why? What is it exactly that you're recommending? They may be shy to ask you. They may think they have to sit there and read the whole thing. So have a bank of exemplars and think about what it is of that thesis that you're recommending. Okay, good. Obviously, we have a repository, QUT ePrints, and I tell them to go and have a look at that. And I show them ways that they can find, specifically the title or the author. So again, you can also use this for your students. So I guess in terms of organization, it's really important for you to discuss the writing with your students. So what you could do and what I do is we sit down and we develop that outline. Okay, what are the major headings? What are the subheadings? How are you going to structure this? Remember that table of contents needs to continually be updated and aligned with the way you've created your chapter. You can ask them to write keywords, key points under each heading, and remembering to link back to the research question, the problems and the aims. And then what you can do, once you've created that structure, you can actually say to them, okay, what's the topic sentence? Remember, it's so important. What's the topic sentence for this paragraph? What's the topic sentence? You could even just get them to start with topic sentences. And then it can work on to, they can include those supporting sentences. So here's an example, and I show this to your students as well, of a section, a chapter 1 section. And so they've got it all there ready. And so what they would need to do, and I use this as another example, and I've taken this from a student. So they get the topic, and you can see here, this student for 1.1, for example, they've got 3 points here. And they've got, well, this is what I want to include in this section. And this section, that means it's going to be 3 paragraphs. And these are the authors that I'm going to refer to. It's just a way to be organized. And then the next step is then to go and write the topic sentence. It's just honestly such a great way for them to start writing. So I've created this document. It's just called Organize Your Writing. I'll send it to you in a follow-up email. And it's just the same thing. You get them to write the paragraph for the intro of the chapter. And then they decide how many paragraphs are they going to have in the first section. And then what's the topic sentence? What do they think belongs in that paragraph, the sort of supporting sentences, and which authors should they use? And you can actually sit in a meeting with your students. It's like holding their hand, but believe me, in the end, you're going to see lots of productive writing and clear organization as well. Okay, something else I think this fits here is to remind students that as they're organizing their document, they're not just reading, they're reading and writing. And I don't know if you guys are aware of, it's Thinkwell, it's called iThinkwell. I think I have a link for you in the next slide. Lots of great information, but they say students must do reading and writing. And similar to what I said earlier, students need to read as a writer. So that means as they're reading all this wonderful content, they're looking at the structure and they're emulating that in their own writing. And then they write as a reader. So as they're writing, they need to think, will the reader understand this? Is this is this clear? Have I given context? Is this organized? Because what will happen is they have something in this paragraph and then they mention it in 3 paragraphs later, and it's completely disorganized. So these are 2 big tips. So think well, and I think again, there is a clickable link here, but if you like, I can, oh no, sorry, I actually don't have a link available in my notes. But yes, Think Well has lots of little worksheets like this. You can give to your students and say, okay, go read this, please. And as you're reading, think about all these questions. So some really great material for you to give to your students. Okay, I told you there was lots of me talking. So again, lots of information here, some really great YouTube clips as well. So all clickable, you can send to your students. All right, that brings me to number 5, which is the critical thinking for establishing a critical voice. So when I say voice in academic writing, I mean argument. This is a common problem. Thanks so much, Abby. That's really kind of you. Abby's just put in a link to Think Well. Fantastic. So often you just see students, describing. There's so much description, and they're not providing that critical voice. They're not, they're writing without an argument. And remember, they need to make a contribution to knowledge in their field. So it's really vital that we encourage them to use a critical voice. So if you'll allow me, I'll just read this out. As an academic writer, you're expected to be critical of the sources that you use. This essentially means questioning what you read. You don't necessarily have to agree with it just because the information has been published. Being critical can also mean looking for reasons why we should not just accept something as being correct or true. This may tie in with culturally with some of your students. And I also have a workshop on cross-cultural considerations in supervising as well. So please feel free to come along to that, the next iteration of that. This can require you to identify problems with the writer's arguments or methods, or perhaps to refer to other people's criticism. Okay, so, and so on. So what I do is I give your students a copy of the thesis examination guidelines. I'm going to put a link to it in the chat. And the reason that I do that is because some of them just, they're unaware of it, or, maybe they need to be reminded of what it is the examiner's told to do when they're looking at their writing. And I stress to them, point number 1, the main purpose of graduate research study at QUT is to encourage independence and originality of thought in the quest for new knowledge. You can't just describe, they can't just describe continually. They need to be reminded, hey, the reason you're doing this is because you're joining the conversation, you're adding to the discourse community. So I love this article. Again, it's by Kamler and Thompson, and I send this out to so many students after a one-to-one. I say to them, I don't know if you've heard the term an invisible scholar, but what the students are doing is they're hiding behind other literature. So they need to add to the value of their research by using their voice. Be critical of the literature that they're reading and make judgments on it. Don't just summarize, write less descriptively, take an evaluative stance, construct arguments, show how you've contributed to the literature. And again, later on, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at examiners' comments. This is a common one. Don't just state facts. You need to relate it back to your study. What are your judgments on the significance of previous findings, and also the judgments on your findings as well? So really, really common for students to do that. And this is what we need to stop them from doing. And again, that's why you're here today, to notice when your students are being an invisible scholar and encourage them to have that critical voice. So here's some information to send your students. Okay, moving along. we're getting into engaging your reader. And I know I've already talked about that earlier, where I encourage you to use exemplars. Students can emulate that, but engaging your reader. Remind your students so that person there, that's the tour guide, that's not you, that's your student. They are guiding the reader through their thesis. And we say to them, you know, who's your audience? Like, I have this whole spiel about who is your audience. And I think, oh, that's my next slide. And I say to them, you know, it may be your family, but it's actually your supervisors, your examiners, and a select audience of specialized examiners. Yes, they may have some knowledge, but your job is to engage them and guide them through your document. I have this great list by Clinton Golding. Clinton Golding has 10 great points. So this is advice for writing a thesis based on what examiners do. And I love this, and I use this a lot in my workshops. But I point out number 4, examiners read a thesis as an academic reader, but also as a normal reader. You need to engage your reader. And in fact, we actually have a workshop on that very topic. It's titled Engaging Your Reader. So we know it's a common problem, and please encourage your students to come along to that one. Engaging your reader and the coherence, you know, that they're also quite similar as well. They sort of blend a little. So again, don't forget your readers, remind your reader, inform your reader, persuade your reader, tell them how your chapter is structured, tell them what's coming next, what they're going to expect. Remind them, what's your aim? What's your question? Who are the stakeholders? Who's going to benefit? And this one really, why is your research important? You know, who is it important for? And why should your readers care about your study? Why have they devoted years of their life to write this thesis? So remind your reader about the purpose of your research. I know I say this again and again, but the readers want predictability, transparency. That's why that organization is so important. The students can provide the value of their research with a logical structure, subheadings, tables, graphs. Again, coming back to those chapters with an introduction and summarizing paragraph. It's really funny. I often see students, you know, they say, I'm going to do A, B, and C, but they do it C, B, A, like they do it in the wrong order. So they need to follow the order in which they state it. Sometimes if they say, there are 3 main points, well, then don't write 4, because sometimes I see that as well. So things like that. Again, in our workshops, we have exemplars, and we give, you know, just a little snippet like this is a way to engage the reader. So we do that. I encourage you to do that as well. Okay. I might stop for a second. Does anybody have any questions or comments up until this point? Okay, great. Thanks, Claudia. Okay, awesome. Conscious that I have to engage my audience as well. Okay, good. All right, well, we continue to number 7, which is the value, showing the value of your research. Sometimes, you know, your students may have this wonderful paragraph, and it just needs to end just with a sentence that explicitly states the value to the research problem or the research aim or any anticipated contributions. Okay, so I'll refer back to that number 1 point that we talked about in the examiner's guidelines. I thought I'd show you again the main purpose. Okay, what's the value? Showing your value, really important. So having it explicitly written. So I'll just read these out. Establish the research problem, the research gaps. The contribution that you make to the conversation is the value. So sometimes they say to me, what is the value? So I say that. Clearly articulated, you know, we show them clear examples of how to show the reader how their research is valuable. And if they're thinking, oh, what is it that's valuable, they need to go back to the problem. Look at the problem and the value. They're connected. And I think, again, just to remind you, every section and every chapter needs to justify the research. A very short example to ensure a rigorous theoretical model, which we'll use as a lens. Okay, again, lots of exemplars are the best way to help students show the value of their research. I've also got some clickable links here, some YouTube, really great YouTube videos out there. And I'd also like to talk to you about the Manchester Phrase Bank. Oh, I have a slide coming up on the Manchester Phrase Bank. It's a wonderful resource that, in fact, maybe I'll just quickly click through to it. Oh no, because I need to ask you a question. Okay. It has, you know, if it has different sections, if your student's stuck and they don't know how to begin, they don't know how to start, the Manchester Phrase Bank, it's for HDR students, and they basically have sentence starters. And it's not plagiarizing, it's just ways to show students how they can show the value, how they can compare, how they can, you know, it's a wonderful resource, and I do have a slide coming up, but I've had many students write to me and say, thank you for sharing this with me. Oh my goodness, I've highlighted it's a favorite and I use it constantly. Oh, great. So Abby's saying, great, it really is, and the students love it as well. Thank you for that, Abby. All right, so number 8 is grammar and punctuation, and obviously not all students have this, but many do. You have students who, you know, native English speakers, they've finished their masters and they, you know, they may think they're these wonderful writers, but grammar in terms of tense particularly, they just need to be reminded and assisted. And again, don't forget my takeaways, you do not need to do it for them. So what do you think? I'll put it to you. What do you think are the top 4 grammar mistakes that I see when I'm dealing with writing issues with your students?
Tense.
Good. Tense. Rachel says missing full stops.
Apostrophes.
Oh, I have 2 children and they hate it when I look at their writing and I'm like, have you got your comma in the right place? That's a compound sentence. Yeah, good. That's only, okay, good. Well, the top 4 that I identified are articles, which is the and the. And I think way to avoid or to improve the articles is as they're reading, remember I said to you, they need to read as a writer. If they have those content nouns, those words, those key words, notice, is there a the? Is there an Is there no article? Okay, and then they can know how to do it in their own writing. Tenses, really important, especially in thesis writing, because we have different tenses at different in different chapters. Prepositions, oh my goodness, prepositions are so hard, and it's so funny. I'm a native English speaker, but sometimes when a student says to me, is that for or by? Sometimes I sit there and think, is that for or by? And sometimes it can be both, and they're so confusing. And the more advanced you get, it seems to be more confusing, but you need to have it correct. And you need your writing to be flawless. And Bettel's saying words spelt incorrectly, that might have the same pronunciation. Yeah. Also, and again, this is not your job, it's your student's job. And the last one I've put is active and passive structure. And I have a whole section on the active and passive in one of my workshops. And we talk to students about how active is preferable to make your writing concise, but it doesn't, we can use passive writing as well in, so yes, They're the top 4. And again, I'm coming back to this list by Clinton Golding, where he states that examiners are irritated and distracted by presentation errors. And I say to them, you need to know how to spell it. You need to know, your apostrophes. You need to know this because you don't want, obviously, you do not want to irritate your examiners. Okay, lots of online resources that Kerry and I have compiled and put on our student Blackboard site. So please refer them to your students, go have a look yourselves. And then we have academic vocabulary. So last week, I actually did a workshop on academic vocabulary. We didn't have many people there. It's a great workshop. And I basically remind your students that academic writing is formal, precise, concise, objective, impersonal. We go into detail too about qualitative researches and writing and using personal pronouns. There's a lot of detailed information about that. But I just talk to them about, choosing words carefully, watch this, if they're subjective. I give them lots of core examples I think can help of what not to do. I talk to them, for example, about phrasal verbs. So a phrasal verb is a word like cut out. You can see in my third example here. Cut out can be used in so many ways. We can cut out with scissors. We can exclude. We can interrupt. There's so many ways to say cut out. And so I remind them to use the one word academic alternative to a phrasal verb. We talk about strong verbs and weak verbs, and there's so much in that that workshop. It's a really great workshop. So yes, we do have information and events for your students on that. I also encourage them to use a thesaurus. Ways to find synonyms is by right-clicking. Some of them don't even know that if you right-click on the Word document, it will bring you to a list of synonyms. But I also remind them that they need to check the synonym because the context may be incorrect as well. So we talk through a lot. Here's my Manchester Phrase Bank slide. Look at all of the different, we have introducing word, referring to sources, describing methods, reporting results. There's so many. And I don't have this slide here, but each one of these has, hundreds of example sentence starters where the students can refer to, especially if they're feeling like they have a block and they don't know how to start it. Okay, so here's the resources. So that brings me to the final problem, I guess, that I identify, and that's editing and proofreading. I always say to the students, is your writing good enough to send your supervisor? Is it ready to be published, or is it ready to be sent off? Your job is to edit and proofread that. So I say to them, academic writing is a skill. And as I said, it doesn't come naturally. I once had a student who was an amazing writer. She wrote online, but her style was informal. And she had to teach herself how to write as an academic writer. It doesn't come naturally, and they do need to practice it. And I say to them, it's iterative. You need to write a draft, reflect on it, keep writing those drafts, more revisions, proofread them, and write more revisions. We all do that, and you have to. And it's really an important aspect of writing. They need to look for spelling, punctuation, formatting. So many of them forget to put page numbers down. They need to as they're proofreading, they need to check, is my document coherent? Is there a thread? Or are all my paragraphs flowing? Are my sections and chapters flowing? Do I have value? Am I showing the value of my research? Okay. And I remind them, and I should tell you as well, we have a workshop on proofreading. We have a whole workshop dedicated to it. I say to them, it's not the final part. They need to continually do it. So perhaps in your role as the supervisor, you can say to them, okay, I'd like you to proofread this document and show me how you proofread it and what did you find, So really important. And a term that we refer to often. As I mentioned earlier, we talk about self-regulation skills, but we also talk about building evaluated judgment skills. So that refers to the understanding of what constitutes quality. And it's also the ability to judge the quality of my work and others' work. And it's really, it's a skill. They look at it and they go, oh, it's just not good enough, or, you know, compared to this and compared to others. And so that's the evaluated judgment skills. Okay. A writing circle on proofreading. All right, so that brings me to the final part of today, where I'm going to, as I said to you at the beginning, I've compiled a list of comments. I've de-identified students, I've de-identified the examiners to show you that so many of the comments by examiners really connect to the 10 issues that I've identified. Before I embark on that, would anybody like to make a comment or have any questions at this point? Okay. I'll keep going then. Okay, thank you. All right, so it's quite brief actually, this part, but here we go. The first one. Here's my 10 points. Again, don't worry, you'll be getting these slides. And number 2 point here from Clinton Golding is that thesis examiners tend to be broadly consistent, and it's so true, regardless of faculty. I find, because I get to see the examiner's comments as well, and the students are referred to us, and what we do is work through them one by one, and they really are. It doesn't matter where you are in the university, they're very consistent comments. Okay, so here we go. Here are some comments that show a lack of cohesion. I'm not going to read it, I'll save my voice, but the highlighted parts are the refer to the cohesion. Okay, then we work through to coherence. Grammar and punctuation and vocabulary. And again, I've just taken some of these. It's you know, there's so many. Value of research. If you look at point 4, has not yet adequately established the originality, contribution, and significance of the research. Thanks so much, Abby. Critical voice. Again, look at these comments. So again, the reasons I'm showing you these today is so that your students can avoid getting these comments, and you can guide them if you find, oh yeah, this particular student needs to have more of a critical voice. Engaging your reader. I was quite pleased that so many of the comments were similar to the issues that I identified as the language and learning educator. Editing and proofreading. I didn't talk about referencing, but a lot of the editing and proofread can be on referencing as well. You know, the library has so many wonderful workshops on using the use of EndNote, and we have that fabulous site right on the library website. So there really isn't a reason for referencing problems. They just need to do it. And as a supervisor, you can remind them don't forget, have you checked your references? Are they accurate? It should be, you don't want to, again, it's you don't want to irritate the examiners by having these, simple mistakes. Okay, so I've got some other resources on examiners, what examiners do, advice for writing a thesis. That's Clinton Golding's book. Okay, so that brings me to the end, and really, what is it that you can do as the supervisor? And I have a little list here. The first one is, please diagnose your writing issues early. The issues might not develop straight away, but if you can, diagnose them early. Which mistakes are your students making? And then again, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to have relevant exemplars, both good and bad, okay? Encourage your students to read and emulate that style. That will help with their prepositions. It will help with so many things. Remember, your students value your feedback. If you tell them, go to HDR writing support, they will do it. So yeah, think about the feedback instruction that you're giving them as well. And again, I have this really great supervisor workshop on feedback, and I talk to you about the different types of feedback at different times throughout candidature that you give. It's a real interest of mine, actually. So I'm quite passionate about feedback. So come along to that session if you're able. Tell your students come to us. Remind them they need to be self-regulated learners. And I've got 8 as a question mark, because I thought, is there anything else you think you can do? You can add in the chat if you like, what else you can do. I'll give you a second to think about that. And while you're doing that, I'll say to you, and I say to them, write early and write often. Remember, writing, as I said to you, right at the start, it's an inevitable part of their journey, the writing. Even if they don't use the writing, it will help them to think, to clarify their thinking. If they write early, they're going to save that time when they all say, oh, it's now time for writing up. Well, you should be writing the entire time, okay? We don't want to think at the end they're so stressed because they need to write everything up. High quality academic writing is difficult, and it really does take years to learn. I am the facilitator of a lounge, the HDR Writers Wellbeing Lounge is the full title. And I offer your students a place to sit with their peers and write. I use the Pomodoro timers. We use a 25-minute sprint. They sit there, they write. They come and they write on a little Padlet what their objectives are, and we go for it. And we do a few of them. We also have a chance to chat and connect to avoid, stop any isolation and really create that wonderful community of practice as well. So encourage your students to come. I have one tomorrow. It's a weekly lounge. So not all students have the time to do it, or it's not on at the right time, but it's really important you get them to write. I'll just look at Rachel's takeaway, empowering students to self-regulate and to learn how to apply their judgment. Good. Claudia says, I think I would also add something about the critique aspect, not being the invisible researcher. Absolutely. We also have peer feedback sessions. My colleague Kerry is the facilitator of them. They can come and they're put together with other students, and they provide feedback on each other's writing. She's got this wonderful process all perfectly in place. This is not weekly, it's I think once a month we have these sessions, and these are all the reasons that you can send them, and lots of students regularly come to that as well. I have lots of regulars in the lounge as well, which is great. Okay, so just remember as well that we are here to support you and can help your students ultimately. If you are interested, these are the workshops for supervisors. So Kerry has just done the late stages thesis writing. Today's session is the supporting HDR academic writing. Kerry also runs the supporting students critical thinking and writing. And then I'm the facilitator of the feedback techniques and the cross-cultural supervision. And I'll also be facilitating a workshop on tough conversations as well. Thanks so much, Anna. Yes, there's so much support. I'm putting those takeaway points in here again, like I did at the beginning. Knowing what the problems are gives you that landing on what to talk to your students about. And it also just helps you to see, okay, these are the 10 points that Tasha's outlined. Let me look at my students and see, oh yeah, are they doing that? Or which ones are they doing? Or perhaps they're doing others as well. All right, that brings me to, this is an important part, and I need to put the link in, if you will. Oh, I'm missing all of your comments. Just a moment. I'm going to just quickly put in this link to the survey. I really appreciate it if you can fill it out. It's very short. It's just 4 quick questions. It just helps us inform future workshops as well. And actually, I did do this in semester 1, and I went back this morning and had a look at the comments, and someone said to slow down. So I really did try today to slow down. I don't know if I was successful, but thank you in advance for filling that out. Oh, thank you for all your lovely comments as well. And here's my references. I actually have 3 slides in here of references for your students. So I've hidden those slides, but what I'll do is I'll put it into an actual document, and it's just books for your students to go and read. Sometimes students forget to actually go and read and research how to be an academic writing. How can I write using academic style? So that's it. That's the end for me. It's 2:40, so I think I've done quite well. Is everyone still here? Most people are still here. You're welcome to put on your mic, your cameras, you can answer any questions. I'll just stop the recording.
Thanks, Tasha. That was really good. Great workshop. Thank you very much.
Who's that talking? That's Melinda. Thank you. It's lovely to see. I was happy when I saw your face, your name pop